So in sports, you have rivalries, right? And one of the best classical rivalries is Magic Johnson versus Larry Bird. And as you guys know, I am an Eagles fan, and the Dallas Cowboys, the New York Giants, and the Washington Commanders football team slash Redskins are in my division. And the Washington Commanders in the past couple of years have not really been a threat to our division or really to the Eagles. Of course, they have, every now and then something crazy happens, like a big game that they win, or like 2020 they just won the whole division. But in the early 2000s, they were constantly a threat to the NFC East, but they were missing some pieces and missing that one factor that could have made them a way better team. And in today's video, we're going to be going over that, what happened to the early 2000 Washington Redskins teams. So our story begins back in 04/05, and pretty much chop it up and bring it together. Pretty much back in 04, the Washington Redskins, they drafted Sean Taylor, one of the game's greatest safeties of all time, in a short window period. Rest in peace, his soul. But in 2005, they brought in another defensive back in Carlos Rogers. And what made this acquisition, this draft pick, so crucial was because the defense was aging very, very fast. As you can see right here, here are the defensive starters, and nobody besides Sean Taylor was under the age of 25. So they needed some youth. They needed to revamp that defense because offensively they had a old school style of play. Pretty much run the ball with Clinton Portis, 1,200, 1,100, 1,300 yards, and then just play physical defense. But even though in 04 they had a top 5 defense, in 05 they had another top 10 defense, you can only do so much with Asian pieces, and with veteran players, you gotta retool it. You gotta have some young pieces come in and take over for those old school guys. Even on the offense side of the ball, they had some Asian pieces, some Asian players that need to be replaced with some younger guys, because again, you can only do so much with a 35-year-old quarterback and Mark Brunell. And in 2005, they actually drafted a quarterback with their second first-round pick, being Jason Campbell. Yes, that's right, folks. They drafted not one, but 2 Auburn players in the same exact draft, in the same exact round. So in 05, the Washington Redskins, they went 10-6. They were second in the NFC East division, and they actually made it to the division round. They could have made it to the NFC Championship game, but they could not ease out versus the Seattle Seahawks. And in that game, they struggled to run the ball. And when they struggle to run the ball, they are not winning games, because Clinton Portis, he is the forefront of this offense. Like, he is the guy that they want to play the offense through, not throw the ball first. But that was the point of getting a new quarterback, because when you get a new quarterback, a fresher young quarterback, and you get some more weapons, it makes the defense on their heels, because you have a really good running back, you can hand the ball up to him. But if you have a really good quarterback, you can throw the ball to your really good receivers like Santana Moss or Chris Cooley. So the foundation was set. Again, run the ball, run the ball first, but at the same time, throw the ball if you have to, with a really good young quarterback that has some really good targets. But going back to the game, man, you can see both teams are struggling to move the ball. Sean Alexander, the MVP of that year, got hurt, man, and if it wasn't for this lucky throw by Mark Brunell to Santana Moss for a touchdown, it's a highly lucky chance that the Washington Redskins was not going to score a single touchdown. But man, if they just had a little, like, a average offense that game, probably would have won the game. Because again, Clinton Portis, he struggled, man. He went 17 for 41. Mark Brunell, he threw the ball a lot, and although he was, decent, if it wasn't for that lucky throw again, they probably would not have scored. And so that will conclude their 2005 season. A really good season. They made it to the divisional round, and although they lost, it was, a really good step in the right direction. So heading to the 06 offseason, it was really simple what they had to do. Add some more defensive youth on the defensive side of the ball, build around Sean Taylor and Carlos Rogers. You want to have that combination of youth and old players, that veteran leadership, guys that can come in and mentor the younger guys. Really, really simple. And offensively, very, very similar. First off, move off Mark Brunell, get a younger quarterback with a lot of potential, and have some weapons around him, which they did in Chris Cooley, Santana Moss, and they brought in Antoine Randall L. And if they still want to have that run first mindset, they can still do that while having a young quarterback that's developing his arm and his accuracy and things like that. But there's only one problem, because they did not have a first round pick in the 06 draft. So let's rewind just a little bit back to the 05 NFL draft, because again, they had 2 first round picks. One of them was their own, was they drafted Carlos Rogers, and the second was in the mid-20s where they got Jason Campbell. Now that Jason Campbell pick was from the Denver Broncos, and they actually traded their 06 first round pick for pretty much Jason Campbell, and that will pretty much bite them in the butt in the future, because in the 06 draft they could have used some of these players. One of these guys being Jonathan Joseph, another cornerback. They could have got Mercedes Lewis, adding more tight end power, a really good receiving tight end, or if they wanted to add just a backup running back, you had D'Angelo Williams and Joseph Adai going in the first round. And although this pick became Manny Lawson because the Broncos traded that to the Niners, and then Manny Lawson became nothing pretty much, it somehow gets a little bit better for them though, because in the second round, day 2 or whatever, they actually traded up to the second round, 3rd overall pick. So I guess 35th overall pick. That came out wrong, I'm sorry. And they got a linebacker, and Rocky McIntosh, a really solid tackling linebacker, middle linebacker. But the 2 picks ahead of him became DeMeco Ryans and DeQuell Jackson. So it makes me question, why not, trade a little bit more up to get one of those guys, because those guys would have made your defense a hell of a lot better. But somehow, some way, it goes opposite, because the thing is, that pick was actually the Jets pick, that 35th overall pick, and they traded, so they actually swapped picks, the second round picks, and the Redskins gave up a 6th round pick and their 2007 second round pick. So they're trading away more draft capital for the future, and that's never good in the NFL, especially when you're drafting or you're trading away first rounders, second rounders, or third rounders, especially first rounders. You never want to trade first rounders and get nothing for it. But outside of that, they did get some more defensive players in the later round. They got 2 defensive linemen in Anthony Montgomery and Cedric Golston, and they got a DB in Reed Doughty. Now, outside of that second round pick, they didn't have a 3rd or a 4th round pick. So they're missing key, very, very key picks. And so what happened to them? That's, I did a little research, and so this is what happened to them. So the 3rd round pick, they actually traded to the San Francisco 49ers, and they got Brandon Lloyd, a really young wide receiver at the time. He was coming off his best season so far. He had about 109 targets, 48 receptions, about 44% catching rate. He had about 700 yards. They want to add some more youth to their receiving core. Very smart move, but sadly didn't really work out in Washington. After 2 years, he was let go. He goes to the Bears. But oh boy, that 4th round pick, they missed out big time, because that 4th round pick, remember, it was to the Denver Broncos for that 1st round pick, 4th round pick for Jason Campbell, essentially. And that became Brandon freaking Marshall. That's right, folks. This Brandon Marshall. The Brandon Marshall that had a really, really productive, borderline Hall of Fame career in the NFL. Imagine if they had his production on those Redskin teams. But let's move forward. So moving on to 2006, again they added a lot more weapons for the offensive side of the ball. They added some more defensive youth, things like that. And so 2006 was supposed to be a big year for the team, but sadly they went 5-11. They had a tremendous step back on both offense and defense, and really defense, because they finished pretty much dead last in every major stat. And in turnovers, they were dead last in 32nd. Whereas last year they were definitely a way better team at getting turnovers and things like that, because last year they were in the middle of the pack at 15, and dropping off from 15 to 32 is a major major dip, and no other player had more than one interception. Sean Taylor got his one, and a bunch of nobody got theirs, and pretty much their defense took a drastic step back. And offensively, they started Mark Brunell for about half of the season, about 9 games, and then they throw in Jason Campbell as Clinton Portis is hurt, and so their offense is not fully healthy and things like that. And so Jason Campbell, he definitely struggled, and 2006 was just a wasted year for the team, and they had to make some changes going into 2007. Now, heading to the offseason, it was very simple what this team had to do. Again, add some more defensive youth to the team because the front seven is aging like milk. It's not aging too well, and these guys, they're slowly but surely getting worse, and you can see they're still finishing bottom 10 sacks and things like that. Second thing is getting some defensive playmakers, guys that can turn the ball over, create turnovers. Obviously, you got Sean Taylor, but teams are just not scheming around him. They're not running towards his way or passing the ball towards his way, and Sean Taylor is not adjusting to that, or he is, but he can only do so much as one player. And offensively, they had to get another running back or get another quarterback, because Jason Campbell, he showed you okay flashes, but he's not doing anything too special. Granted, the team was not fully healthy when he was inserted into the lineup, and he was just thrown into the fire and really never given a fair shot. So I will give him that. But the thing is, can Clinton Portis come back and still produce at a very high level? At the time, that was a major question. Can he come back and still produce at a all-pro, Pro Bowler, 1,200, 1,300 yard performance? And very soon we'll see how he would do. But going to the 07 draft, they had a top 10 pick. They had the 6th pick overall, and they used that pick. They got LaRon Landry, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But besides that first round pick, they did not have another pick until the 5th round. And just like I said earlier, they were trading away key draft picks during this time, man. And yes, these players, they were semi-decent players like Brandon Lloyd. They got TJ Duckett and things like that. They want to trade up and things like that, but they got nothing that in return to help them for the future. They wanted short-term players to get them short-term results, and it hurt them in the long term. Now, had they kept their 2nd round pick, they could have got another key player defensively, and one of those key players could have been Eric Weddle. Now, ironically enough, when the San Diego Chargers got him, that wasn't their pick originally. It was actually the Redskins pick, but it was traded down to like 2 or 3 teams, and somehow, some way, it landed in San Diego's hands, and they got one of the best safeties during that time in Eric Weddle. And the pick after that, it became Zach Miller, a guy from Arizona State who had a really solid NFL career. It doesn't get talked about too much. They could have used him, just paired him up with Chris Cooley and gone crazy with them too, or they could have got someone like a Lamar Woodley on the defensive side of the ball, on the defensive line, bring some youth, bring a really good potential guy, with high potential, a high ceiling, high floor type of guy. Or if they wanted to, make the offensive line younger, they could have got Ryan Khalil. Again, just younger guys is what you want. Younger guys, high ceiling, high floor, come in and help the team out long term. Not getting players that are short term and giving you short term results. And that's typically what they did these past couple years, getting these guys like Brandon Lloyd, TJ Duckett, Mark Brunell, short-term players giving you short-term results. Now, besides getting LaRon Landry in the draft, now they did sign London Fletcher from the Buffalo Bills, a really solid middle linebacker who's been in the league for many years at this point, going into age 32, a guy who can get you 100 tackles a season and actually be like the Mike Collar for the defense. And that's what they really wanted, was somebody, just a new quarterback for the defense, a veteran guy. Again, he's a little bit older, but he does have a lot of experience, a lot of leadership, things like that, and that can help this defense pair alongside Sean Taylor with leading the charge. And I think that's a very underrated signing during the 2000s was them getting London Fletcher. But besides that, man, it was time to go into the 2007 season, and they made the playoffs, actually going 9-7, and they had a really mid team. And Their defense, it took a very, very positive step forward. Their rushing defense was very, very good, being top 10 in pretty much every major stat. But passing defense, they did struggle with creating turnovers, trying to get interceptions. They finished 25th overall at creating turnovers, and the thing is, they lost their best player. If you guys remember back in November of 2007, Sean Taylor unfortunately lost his life, and the team had to move on without him, and they actually started one of their youngsters, and Reed Dowdy, he pretty much took over the free safety position after Sean Taylor lost his life. May God rest his soul. And the thing is, the crazy part is, they did not make the playoffs because of Jason Campbell. Now, Jason Campbell actually got hurt versus the Chicago Bears, and the Washington Redskins had to put in Todd Collins, which I think is also very important, just to point out that, again, Jason Campbell didn't do anything too crazy. Now, he was 6-7 as a starting quarterback, and he had 2,700 yards on the dot, 12 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. Again, nothing too crazy. He had a 59.8 QBR, a 77.6 rating, and again, he was, helping the team win, but he wasn't doing anything too special. And really, the person who really was making them win was Clinton Portis, because he actually came back really strong that year, having about 1,200 yards, 11 touchdowns. He had 389 receiving yards, having almost 1,600 total scrimmage yards. Actually having 1,600 total scrimmage yards and a total of 11 touchdowns. So he was the workhorse, and you had Liddell Betts, coming off the bench. He had a solid 06 season, replacing Clinton Portis when he was hurt, and they kept him around. He was doing his thing, but Jason Campbell was not the reason why they won and made it to the playoffs. It was actually Todd Collins. And Todd Collins wasn't just throwing the ball 5 or 6 times during these 3 to 4 game stretch. He was throwing the ball 20 plus times. And in the first game versus the Chicago Bears, he came in for Jason Campbell. He came out the gate super strong, throwing for 224 yards and 2 touchdowns, edging out the Chicago Bears 24-16, and that gave the team a lot of confidence. And going to the next game versus a divisional rival in the New York Giants, although he did struggle, they still won 22-10 because the man himself, Clinton Portis, went crazy with 25 attempts, 126 yards, and 1 touchdown. Bro put the team on his back and went crazy. And yeah, the team, they were back in that groove of just winning again, and part of it was because Sean Taylor did lose his life. They wanted to do it for him, but which in the final 2 games, man, Todd Collins, the legend himself, threw for 498 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. And what was really impressive was that he did not turn the ball over with interceptions. Yes, he had 1-2 fumble losses during his time, but the fact that they had really good ball security says a lot, actually, because Jason Campbell, he was a turnover machine. At the same time, he would fumble the ball, lose track of the ball, and he would get sacked a lot of times, and a lot of it was because he held onto the ball too much, trying to play hero ball. And you can just tell the team was in a lot better, a lot more comfortable when Todd Collins was quarterback. And going into the playoffs, finishing off 4. And I think it's also really important just to point out the fact that their defense was also doing its part, holding their end during this 4-game winning streak. And they had, again, really great momentum going to the playoffs after beating the Cowboys. And they matched up versus the Seattle Seahawks once again. And once again, they failed to beat the Seattle Seahawks. And that momentum came crashing down, hit a brick wall super fast, and they lost 35-14. And in that game, Todd Collins, he threw the ball 50 times. He had about 266 yards, but he had 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. And he also had a fumble, but he did not lose the fumble. And when they handed the ball off to Clinton Portis, he only had 20 carries and 52 yards, barely getting 2 yards a carry. And you can just tell that the offense did not look itself. Now, defensively, they did play pretty well. They forced the Seahawks to go 2 for 11 on third down, and they actually won the time of possession battle by nearly 10 minutes, having the ball for 34 minutes, and the Seahawks had the ball for 25 minutes and 45 seconds. And Sean Alexander, he did not break loose this game, only going for 15 carries and 45 yards, just barely getting 3 yards a carry. And the thing is, both offenses did not play as good, but their defenses balled out. LaRon Landry, the rookie, he had 2 total interceptions, and he didn't really do nothing with the ball like after he got the interceptions. But the Seahawks, Marcus Trufant and Jordan Babingnogs, they both had interceptions, and they took them to the house, getting 2 touchdowns. So that right there is 14 points. And Matt Hasselbeck, he had a touchdown. There goes 21. And Leonard Weaver, he had a touchdown. That's 28. So the 2 defensive touchdowns really hurt the Washington Redskins. If Todd Collins just held onto the ball, his ball security was good all season, but he did sort of fumble the bag or throw away the game with those 2 interceptions. So moving on to 2008, this is where it gets a little bit sticky, because first things first, Daniel Snyder, he just did a complete clean house on the coaching side, getting a new head coach in Jim Zorn, and getting Sherman Smith and Greg Black as his coordinators. And on the surface, it looked pretty good, because as you know, Joe Gibbs, he can only get you so far. The furthest he got you was a divisional round, and he had a couple of season failures here, and besides that. But besides that, they really did not make the team better. Like, they didn't really bring in anybody from free agencies, trading, or even drafting anybody to help this team become a better team. And in the NFL draft, they had not 1, not 2, but 3 second-round picks. And so you would think with a receiving core of Santana Moss, Chris Cooley, Antoine Randall L., and Brandon Lloyd, they'll be fine. But no, again, Brandon Lloyd, he showed many signs of regression throughout the season. And Santana Moss and Chris Cooley, I guess, are just not enough. And Antoine Randall L., he's really a quarterback, quote unquote. And so they went ahead and got 2 receivers and 1 tight end from the NFL draft. The first one being Devin Thomas, a pretty average receiver during his time in college at Michigan State. They got a tight end in Fred Davis, again, just another average guy. And they got Malcolm Kelly, and none of these guys would help the Redskins in the long term. Just, again, short-term players getting short-term goals. And the Redskins, it looked like it was going to be a long season in 2008. So the Redskins, they went 8-8, another failed season, and they had one of the worst offenses in 2008, but they had one of the better defenses at the time. Greg Black was definitely an upgrade, but Sherman Smith as the offensive coordinator was definitely a downgrade. And again, they had that model of run the ball first and play physical defense. And Clinton Portis, he actually did ball out this season, having more than 1,400 yards with 9 touchdowns, and even having about 218 receiving yards, getting him 1,700 total scrimmage yards. So bro was balling out. Liddell Bett as a backup running back, he played pretty average, about 200 yards on the ground, even though he was the backup. And Jason Campbell, he had 258 rushing yards and 1 touchdown. So definitely showing his mobility, but passing-wise, he didn't look too good. Okay, he had 13 total touchdowns, 6 interceptions, which the interception part is pretty decent, but touchdown-wise, you only got 13. I mean, yes, you got 3,200 yards, but, I mean, he didn't do anything too crazy. Now, I will cut him some slack because he was getting sacked a lot with 38 sacks. That's nearly about 2 or 3 every game, and yes, his jersey was getting 30 each and every game. But more importantly, when we look at their wins and losses, they had about 5 games where they could not rush over 100 yards, and they lost all 5 of those games. So again, when they can't rush the ball, when they can't run the ball, their offense does not look that good. And in all 5 of those games, 2 of those games they got more, or they got 10 points exactly. And all those other games they couldn't even get just another touchdown or another field goal, only having 7 points twice and 6 points in the other game. And so I guess the purpose of this video is to really just go back in time and look at another team that had a lot of potential, but it was wasted due to poor management, poor decisions, and poor performances from various players. And I get it. Some things were out of their control, like Sean Taylor passing. Yes, nobody expected that to happen during mid-season while you're trying to push for a playoff run. But the thing is, when you have a 35, 36-year-old quarterback that played better than your young star quarterback, quote unquote, and you don't replace him, or that's not alarming, that is poor management. And again, the Washington Redskins have not been a threat to us these last 3 to 4 or 5 seasons. And I just want to point out the fact that, they had potential, and they had potential back in the early 2000s, late 2000s, but again, it was just wasted. And since then, since 2008, they've had numerous losing seasons. They had numerous collapsing, numerous poor decision making, and I'll take it as an Eagles fan. But with that being said, make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe if you like this kind of video. More videos like this will be produced more in the future, and we are out, man. Peace.